I'd like to call to order this March 2nd, 2023 meeting of the Centreville Town Council. We'll start with the pledge, and if folks could remain standing for a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, Council should have the February 16th, 2023 minutes in their agenda packet. Is there any changes folks would like to make, or is there a motion to adopt?
I noticed under appearances, we're talking about, under B, the events update, it says that Mr. Klein made a motion to waive
I
it.
fixed it.
Hmm?
I fixed
You
it.
fixed it, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, there's no second, there's no vote. Yeah, okay, good. Thank you.
All right.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting, February 16th meeting.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We'll move into our first citizens forum of the night. Are there any public wishing to speak? Just come on up and tell us your name, and actually we're going to read a short public statement here.
Welcome to this meeting of the Centreville Town Council. This is a public meeting, and we welcome your participation. By attending, you acknowledge that this session is recorded and aired live on QACTV 7. During the meeting, we ask that you turn your cell phones off and hold personal conversations outside the meeting room. The scheduled agenda is available on the information table just outside. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per person. The Town Council respects and appreciates your desire and right to convey your message freely, and in keeping with the dignity of proceedings, we ask that all views be expressed in a respectful and civil manner. Comments longer than 3 minutes should be submitted in writing. If questions are a part of your comments, we'll refer those to the appropriate individual. Thank you.
Sorry for the false start.
No worries, track coach. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Town Council. Thanks for allowing me to speak. My name is Theo Reed. I live at 609 Little Kitwell Avenue. I lived in Centreville for approximately 19 years. 17 years ago, I came to the Town Council and got support to install a stop sign at Little Kitwell and Providence Lane / Court. Today, I'm here to request that speed calming technology, speed bumps, speed humps be installed on Little Kitwell Avenue and perhaps Kitwell as well as Green Street. I moved here in 2004. Since that time period, the population of Centreville has increased by over 50%. Also, since that time period, distracted driving has taken prevalence. And now with the coming of the YMCA, there's a need for effective traffic calming technology to be utilized in that area. I volunteer my time and my skill set to participate in any communities to develop an effective solution. I appreciate the Christmas tree stop sign, the speed trailers, the law enforcement. They're enforcing the speed limit, and folks start at the stop sign. However, folks still go through it. I see it. I'm probably the troll that watches everyone because I live right there. So they're not effective solutions. I think that if we put together a committee, we can look into effective solutions. We can target it as part of a pilot to manage costs with either temporary solutions or long-term solutions. I think that, I know you've done traffic studies in the past. I think once the YMCA opens, that invalidates your traffic studies because the conditions have changed. I think you should be proactive instead of reactive after someone has lost a life or there's been a significant issue there. So I think for the safety of the kids, we need to act with an effective solution. And as I stated, I'm welcome to be part of that and lend my skills to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Brandon Bonner. Just kind of
Piggybacking off what Theo said, I live at 206 Green Street, right in Providence Farm. I've been there for about 2 years now, right across from Jim. I have 5 kids. I have a pretty vested interest in them not getting hit by a car. I'm out there every day. People, speed back and forth. I'm very thankful for the work that the police have done, coming into the neighborhood and trying to have a presence. The new lit up stop signs, by the way, which are not lit up anymore. Only one's working. The traffic or the radar trailer that's put out there and stuff like that. Also, advocating for maybe just something that works, whether it's a speed bump, whether it's one of the islands that are sometimes placed in the middle, just to physically slow people down. We all know rules and laws exist, but there's a select few that do not follow them. Maybe something physically that would force them to slow down. Like Theo was saying, in my career, I'm a full-time paramedic. I've been in emergency services for about 16 years. I'm one of the only pediatric certified critical care paramedics on the Eastern Shore. So I have studied and seen and personally been with children that have, been victim to different accidents like this. And unfortunately, some of them, aren't here anymore. I don't want that to be anybody's kids. I want it to be my kids. I don't want it to be, somebody walking across the street to get the mail, something like that. So like I said, just following up with Theo, I think let's be proactive now instead of reactive. I would hate to have to come here in a year or something like that and say, we said we needed to get something done and, the worst happened. So thank you for your time.
Sounds like you're supportive, both of you all, maybe, of the lit up stop signs?
Yes, I'm very thankful for everything you've done. I know we talked to Ashley, she's my neighbor also. I'm very thankful for everything. Like I said, short of me walking my 300-pound self out in the middle of a car, these people don't slow down. I don't see the same problems that he has because I don't live next to the stop sign. I live right across from Jim. So we have the people flying towards the end or speeding up like it's NASCAR right on Green Street. Like I said, I have kids in high school all the way down to 3 years old. And it's dangerous. So
Thank you.
that's all. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, thank you. We'll have another public comment section at the end. We'll move into old business or rules of council. This was sponsored by the council president. Council should have gotten, I apologize, sort of late notice draft of this afternoon. We have a printed copy of it in your packet here tonight. And for folks that might be watching or in the room here, can't see this, it's basically a set of general rules for the way the council conducts its business. Do folks think we should talk through this, like read it into the record, or how? That seems... All right.
Want me to read it?
No, I can do that. That's what I'm here for, I think. Council, so a couple of things. We're just trying to streamline the meetings and I think have a little bit of consistency across meetings. These would be subject to change, really, I think, whenever we wanted to change them. I look to the sort of town attorney to advise on that. So as quickly as I can, we've got the council agenda. Development and circulation of the final town council meeting agenda is the responsibility of the town clerk and the town manager. Council members are encouraged to take an active role in the development of agenda items. As such, council requests for agenda items must be submitted no later than noon on the Thursday prior to a council meeting, so that's a week before. Any proposed agenda items that miss this deadline can be brought up during council roundtable or wait until the following meeting. For staff-initiated agenda items, the town manager should coordinate with the council president. And I want to be clear, that's an assignment to the person that sits in this chair, not to me. A final agenda will be shared with the council on Friday prior to a council meeting, as is generally the case now. Previous council approved the use of the consent agenda, but it has fallen out of regular use. When appropriate, the consent agenda should be used to vote on items that require council approval without much discussion. So imagine things like the clarification policies from a couple weeks ago, the minutes, things that just take up time but really don't have to. A single council member reserves the right to remove any item from the consent agenda. Correspondence. Correspondence to be read at council meetings should be included in the meeting packet when available in time. Any communication sent to the town manager, town clerk, or other department heads that is addressed to the council should be read into the record as correspondence, unless otherwise shared in the public comment period of a meeting. Written comments submitted by the public in lieu of appearing before the council should be circulated to town council and should be considered part of the record. The reading of written public comments by the town clerk is not required. Department heads. Department heads should generally be encouraged to attend town council meetings and can be called upon, when necessary, by the town manager to provide specific required updates. However, in all other cases, updates from town staff shall be provided by the town manager, town clerk, and town attorney. Legislation. All legislation, resolution, or charter amendment requires a council sponsor prior to its appearance on the town council agenda. Any members who agree to serve as sponsors should be able to review legislation before it is added to the town council agenda. Legislation of a clarifying or perfecting nature, like those we did a few weeks ago, should be sponsored by the council president by title and not by name. All legislation should utilize a roll call vote that ensures the intention of each member of council is clearly recorded. Any comments on any of that?
Yes. I was, yeah, okay, under correspondence, I was thinking that we probably should make the public aware that people, mention by name if anyone submitted a comment. Not, yeah, we're not having the town clerk or whatever read the comment, but the fact that someone did submit one, so someone could actually request that if they wanted.
Sure.
Okay. And does this, do these rules apply at public hearings as well? The reading of communications and comments.
We have often, or at least a few times, dispensed of reading individual comments for legislative hearings if they're just a ton of the same.
Okay.
Yeah, we've batched them as like we got 26 comments
Yeah, they say the same
for
thing.
and 10 against.
Yeah,
The problem is like you get to these comments that are going to take longer than 3 minutes and you just sort of stop when you reach that mark. I think it allows people to present a little bit more than 3 minutes because we don't stop after 3 minutes.
okay. Because I've noticed there's been cases where someone will submit written comments and then they'll also show up and say the same thing, basically.
Right.
So I guess we'll continue to allow that.
Sure.
Okay, that's fine.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? We can adopt this by consensus tonight if we want, or not.
Just want us to fix the one typo so that it says consent agenda in the last line of the council agenda section instead of council agenda. That's my fault, but let's fix it.
Jim, you good?
No, I don't have any problem with any of these. They all seem to document our best practices that we've had through the years.
Great.
And they're worded loosely enough that we have the ability to wiggle when needed.
Change them anytime, I think. All right, is there consent for these with these adjustments?
Okay, I just have one more thing.
Sure.
Sorry. I was wondering if we should include the traditional aspects of the meeting that have probably been there for decades. Like the fact the president makes appointments at the reorg meeting to all the.
That's in the charter, isn't it?
Is it?
Pretty sure it is.
Okay, if that's in the chart, well, I'll send the chart. Okay, then, what was the other one? Let me see. Oh, the fact that public comment is required according to the charter, but we don't have to have it at the end. We don't have to have the beginning and the end. And we also don't have to have a town council roundtable, what we do. should we include the fact that we do those things?
We can, certainly.
Okay.
I like having 2 comment periods.
Me too.
Yeah, I do
in
too.
case
I'm not
things
saying we
come up
shouldn't.
throughout the
Right,
meeting.
but, yeah,
Like somebody might have comments about this.
right, so that, a future council would have to remove that rule if they decided, they don't do
Okay.
that anymore, at least it'd be, it would just.
The agenda will have 2 comment periods.
Right.
And what was the other one?
The
council-
roundtable.
The council roundtable.
So why don't we'll add that and fix this and we can approve this
Recirculate.
next time.
Yeah.
So when folks come up and address us at the head of the meeting like we witnessed tonight, if we're going to address that as individual council members, do we have a means to do that at the time, or do they have to wait all night for our meeting
Yeah,
to
that's a great
expire?
question because I was thinking the same thing. I would love to just talk about that topic so they don't have to sit here forever. Unless they want
We
to.
love company.
I mean, code
Sure,
enforcement's
yeah.
exciting too, I know, but
Yeah, no, how do you deal with that in the context of council rules?
I would say just make it acceptable, not required. Doesn't have to be an agenda thing, but just say it would be acceptable should council members desire to comment at the end of public comments.
So I'm going
Not
to
in the middle of, but at the end of.
say council response to public comment optional or appropriate, acceptable.
yeah.
We could try it out tonight.
We can.
Okay, now that we're on page 2 of the, I'm sure you're trying to keep it down to 1 page, but.
No, I don't,
No, always change the margins.
Okay, there's no mention of the process for appearances, like how does someone request that, I mean, who initiates that, who do they talk to make an appearance?
why don't we'll send, you have this now, since you were the one who volunteered us to write it in the first place. I'm volunteering you to write this portion of it, okay?
Okay,
Clean it up,
all right,
Bring it to the
appearance
next
part.
meeting.
circulate it around.
okay, because I don't know what the process is, but I'll make up something and then you
All right,
guys can
well-
correct me. Okay, I'll do that.
New process is better than no process.
Got it.
Why don't we maybe have, Chief, if you want to come up, we'll talk about
Yeah.
Little Kidwell. We'll adopt a new policy tonight. Just, this is the audible portion of the
That's what makes it fun.
agenda. We've heard some comments tonight about speeding and other things. Little Kidwell, Green Street, Providence Court. We have. So just, me and Dan are the only members of council that don't live down there, so I think we'll turn it over to Jim and Ashley.
I'm a frequent driver down that street though.
Oh, so this traffic count is probably.
Yes. So that is Dan. He was
twice a
going
day.
38 miles an hour at 5 p.m. on the whatever day. So I will just say first, I, like my neighbors shared, do really appreciate the enforcement that has happened down there with police presence, certainly, and with the speed trailer being back down there. I have, the only complaints I have heard about the stop signs are the fact that that one doesn't work. So I'm glad to hear that the parts are in. It worked for a single day, and so while I found them alarming when I first saw them, if they're helping people stop, then that's cool with me. I think the other thing I'll add is that our neighborhood has been trying to do a pretty good job policing itself and each other in terms of the people that actually live there. Theo is very, very good at making sure that we are all at least conscious of the traffic laws, but some of the worst offenders are definitely our neighbors also. I have a 2.5-year-old that's learning to ride a bike. There is nothing more terrifying when Brandon's daughter is out in the front and on the sidewalk playing, and my son, and we have a lot of toddlers in our neighborhood. You will hear 5 parents just scream car the second that you hear one, because coming around that corner from Little Kidwell onto Green Street, it's like they're drag racing or something around that corner. People use those 2 dead ends to just do really quick, dangerous U-turns down there while kids are crossing the street and everything else. And so I'm unsurprised to see that someone was going as fast as 38 miles an hour. And as someone who has attempted just to drive 25 down Little Kidwell, it feels incredibly fast on a tiny neighborhood street. I can't even fathom going 38 miles an hour down there at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. That blows my mind.
Could I make a quick
Yeah.
statement? So to make a couple clarifications on this extended speed summary, you're going to see a maximum speed of 38. If you look on the extended speed summary where it lists out different speeds, you're also going to see 2 for 36 mile an hour. Now, those 3 speeds are the only ones that were over 10 mile an hour in that speed zone. All 3 of those were test runs by the police department. Now, I didn't list that on here, but those were our speeds testing the sign to make sure it was functioning
But
properly.
you tested the sign at 38 miles an hour at 5 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yes, so I did that myself.
Choice, okay.
Well, so there was
We could-
little foot traffic or anybody around when we did it. It was a safe operation. But the reason why we do it is because the sign is set up for specific speeds to, one, either flash the speed with its 5 mile an hour.
Now, I understand how the sign works, but we don't agree that at 5 o'clock in the afternoon isn't the best time to fly through a residential neighborhood at 38 miles an hour to test a
Well, had
sign.
it been unsafe, I wouldn't have done it at that point in time.
At any moment in time, a kid could walk out into the street, Chief. I am stunned to hear you say that was you. Stunned.
Well, in 24 years of me being in law enforcement, I think the safety of the community is my utmost importance. So if I would have done that and thought it was unsafe, I wouldn't have done it.
Then I question your judgment on what is safe.
Okay, all right.
That blows my mind. And I think if we're only going to talk about what's 10 over, I think it's dangerous to be going 32 or 31 or 30. I mean, there are a lot of speeds over the speed limit on this list.
And it's unfortunate that the state law that controls speed cameras, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the old way it was anyway, 12 miles an hour over the speed limit generates a ticket.
That's when it activates, yes.
That's when it activates. So that's 50% over the speed limit by state law. We can't
No, I
change
know how.
that.
But,
It's
well,
fine when
but we
you're
don't have a
going-
speed camera either, so.
It's fine when the speed limit's 55
Yeah.
and 12 over is, 25% of it instead of 50% over it. So the speed cameras are great, but they really aren't quite the behavior modification tool that we'd like because of the state law.
No, absolutely. So, again, this was just collecting data within the last 9 days, since it's only been there for 9 days. And in that 9 days, you've had almost 4,000 vehicles traverse through that one area. The average speed out of 4,000 vehicles was 19.83 mile an hour. So we only had 3 vehicles that went over that 10 mile an hour threshold, and that was us testing the speed trailer to make sure it was working properly, and that all the set parameters were working as they should. So after that, everything was below that 10 mile an hour threshold.
I live and work by data, but this just astounds me that no one in this bottom graph.
Now,
is over the speed
granted, that's only 9 days of data, so.
limit. I got it, but it's just mind-boggling from what a lot of us witness every day.
Sure. And the thing is, after speaking with a lot of the community members, some people think that a vehicle is traveling above the posted speed limit by a visual observation. They don't have a mechanical tool or radar to capture that data. Where we have sat out on Little Kidwell and even Green Street over the several years and shown citizens, we'll say, tell us what cars are speeding. What do you believe is speed?
Right.
And we will activate the radar, the laser, whatever we have at the time, and show them exactly what the speed of the vehicle is, based off of a actual unit of measure.
What does it take to lower the speed limit in a residential community?
So I briefly asked Kip about that today, and I believe it is something we would have to coordinate with the state.
On a town road?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
So we're looking into that. That conversation did happen today. But I think the data here is self-evident. However, something Ashley and I have discussed is when placing a camera is a modification of behavior. So while the data says what the data says, does the data say that because you see that trailer, you see a number, you make a decision? And if you look at the blue disc on here, 75% of the people's behavior was modified by the camera being there. Now, if we were to look to a portable unit, when we talked to Red Speed, their observation when they studied, I think it was last summer, again in the fall, was that the enforcement activity on that camera would not be enough for it to sustain the cost of the
Right,
camera.
because that has to be 12 miles over.
Right.
So that, I think that's why they're here saying that none of these things are going to work.
Right.
And so while I appreciate that you talked to Kip today about lowering the speed limit, that's because I gave you a heads up that the neighborhood was coming, and I have asked for months for information about speed humps and lowering the speed limit. it's not going to satisfy me because a kid gets run over by a car going 27 and the chief can say, oh, well, it was only 2 miles over, so who gives a shit?
And Chief wouldn't say that. I'll wrap up what I was going to say. We also talked about what the cost of and what would be involved in putting in either a speed bump or a speed hump, two different things. And the cost is fairly negligible. So rather than belabor this point, we think there's enough here. Now, I do have concerns about, you know, when the buses go over, that slowing down traffic during that school kind of congestion hour.
I have concern about how
That's
fast
the
the buses
time,
go.
that is the exact time to slow down traffic.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about them coming to a complete stop, your stiff action.
I wish they did come to a complete stop.
So, I think the easy thing is that the council, the plant isn't open yet to get asphalt right now. We would have to wait for the plant to open and for us to get it in the right time to pour, so we don't pour when it's cold. It just crumbles. If the council wants to do this, we can easily say, hey, this is what we would like, and then we can work with Leo to say, okay, where do we want to put these? What is the optimal spot to do? And I have to ask, because I don't know. When Little Kidwell goes through, right there at the Green Street spur, is there a stop sign there now at that road?
Yeah, so there's stop signs at that intersection both ways now, and so there probably will be one, I would assume, right, coming from the Y through Little Kidwell.
Okay. So I think
The problem is, the stop signs aren't, I mean, yeah, put a Christmas tree stop sign, I appreciate that that's what you called it, but that's, I think we need to slow the traffic down. I've been saying that I think the neighborhood is a little bit at its breaking point, and that, you know, it takes a lot for us to get people to show up for our meetings.
they're here. So, I mean, if I think we can do this by consent. It's not a budget item, but I don't.
To do the speed,
To do the
Speed
speed bumps,
bump.
and we can do an exploration of where to put them, look at them, where the optimal spot is. And
Speed humps, not
Humps,
bumps, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I think you could do that by motion. If you do want to reduce the speed, it requires, currently, the state law requires an engineering traffic study to do that. But there is legislation, I believe, that's pending. I don't know, it may have been already killed or something. I haven't followed. But there was legislation proposed during this session that would modify that slightly. But I think in the era of, on the side of giving more flexibility to jurisdictions to control their speed limits.
Well, we've got good data here. Admittedly, it's only 9 days. But if the average speed is under 20, and if 50th percentile is less than 20.5, you know, lowering it to 20 seems like a no-brainer. It really isn't going to affect anybody. We could make that argument with the state about lowering the speed limit. And the 12 over 20 gives a little better opportunity for behavior modification on speeds.
Well, you get a modification of behavior by 42% when you put in a speed bump, 65% with a speed bump. So, I mean, we reduce accidents by 53%.
Chestertown has speed humps around the hospital. It'd be a good place to ask how they're working,
We have the one on Railroad here.
right?
If the council would like, I can sync up with Theo and we can put a plan in action.
If you look in Eastport, they have the, I think you referred to them, you know, where
Yeah, the little
traffic has to
islands.
veer around, and I think they've been successful there.
Yeah, not sure that our streets are wide enough.
I seem to recall there were speed bumps either down Kidwell or Little Kidwell before. I can't remember why they were removed.
I can tell you, my husband is the town engineer in Easton, and they hate speed bumps for the plows.
Yep.
Oh,
It
okay.
damages the plows. So Kip's not here to talk about that, but I know that they try to avoid and do everything else to avoid putting in a speed bump for that reason.
And Kip has expressed that concern before about the plows, but it was when I had talked to him, this is about a year ago, it was about speed bumps, I think, and less so about the speed hump since it's a more gradual situation.
I think
Also, with global climate change, how often are we going to be plowing?
sure as hell didn't this year. But we would also have to get some signs to put up. They have to be annotated with signs. But I think a hump also reduces the plow impact, and we can educate our staff on, there's a speed bump here. Don't run into it, please.
Right now, Green Street and Little Kidwell is the path of least resistance through town. And traffic goes to the path of least resistance. And I've referred to it as the Centreville Beltway for years, because people are leaving the grocery store, leaving the high school, leaving anywhere on that end of town. If they want to go south, they're roaring through our neighborhood. It feels like they're roaring. They may not be, but it sure does feel like it. Anything that we can do, and I fear the extension of Little Kidwell. I know you and I disagree on this, but I fought to not include that when that was originally developed, and it was taken out of the plan because I was fearing what was going to happen. So when we looked with the YMCA, and I was on the YMCA planning team back then, when we looked, we projected the possibility of 100 cars a day addition to Little Kidwell. 100 cars a day new.
And that, isn't that before, I mean, I think a lot of the behavior changed when the road work was happening downtown and people started taking that route and now have just continued to take that route. I mean, yeah, we do absolutely disagree on Little Kidwell. I think the extension makes sense for connected town streets and the greater good, but I think the traffic needs to be going slowly through there. And these speed humps do also address the other thing Theo brought up, which is the distracted driving. You text and drive and nail right into a speed hump at your full rate of speed. You'll wish you didn't, that's for sure.
Okay. Do we need consensus for this? Or do we want to wait for Kip?
I think we can go forward. I already
I've
know
been
what
asking
Kip's
Kip
saying.
about this for over a year. If there's something burning he needed to share, we would have heard it by now.
Do we have consensus?
Yes.
Yes.
While I have the microphone, before we move into code enforcement, we've had some pretty warm conversations up here about police department and automated license plate readers and other things. I would just encourage council to treat our staff with professionalism and respect. I don't find it appropriate that our police chief comes up here to serve the town in the best way he knows how and has his judgment questioned on television. I think that's a difficult place to be. And I would just encourage council not to do that in the future. We'll move into code enforcement.
Sure, so on code enforcement, I had asked for some information to have I got some of it from Chip this week, which thank you, but don't have all of it. So just a couple things, and then we'll need to discuss this again at the next meeting. But what I did ask town staff for was how much we've spent on the code enforcement officer since it was approved, how many violations we have written, and if we find anyone, and what open cases we have, and what does it take to consider a case closed. How long have we had a code enforcement officer in place? It's been over a year, correct?
For sure.
Just about a year, yes.
So approved in the contract, in the budget, and in the contract with the code enforcement officer is up to 10 hours a week of code enforcement. And we have, in the entire time that we've had Bob, gotten 124 hours of code enforcement. So if that's like 2 hours a week or less, very little closed cases. And I don't blame this on an individual. It's because we have really failed to set the mechanism that actually makes something enforceable and usable and enforceable. The last time we got a code enforcement list, there were cases on there that said they were closed that are absolutely not closed. Electronic sign violations, for example, everything that's going on out at the Dollar General, like that their dumpsters are just in the middle of the parking lot because it's become a garden in their fenced in area. Just lots of things that are on there as violation and closed. And it's because we've done everything that we have empowered our staff to be able to do, short of them just doing some really broad fine that currently exists in the code or charter, whichever it is, for them to be able to find someone. So we've collected no fines, we've pretty much closed no cases, and we've gotten only a fraction of the code enforcement that the council 2 budgets ago and again last budget approved and prioritized. When Councilmember Johnson got together a group of people to talk about town events and also beautification of the town, enforcement of the code came up over and over and over again in that group's first meeting in terms of the state of disrepair that properties around town are allowed to stay in, and just things not being enforced. And so I think we need to look at making sure that we're getting, it's probably not 10 hours a week worth of code enforcement to do. There is certainly more than 2 hours a week worth of code enforcement to do. I would love to see for us to speed up the process of getting a resolution or an ordinance, whatever it is that I agreed to sponsor, to put some real fines in place, hoping that we don't have to fine a bunch of people, but to have the mechanism so that we can make a behavior modification because, I mean, you've been repeatedly ignored about the electronic sign violation. Code enforcement officer has been repeatedly ignored. I don't know what we have the code for if we're not going to enforce it, and just feel personally, because I've made no secret about how important I think enforcing the code is. It's one of the reasons you live in a town and pay town taxes, because there are standards put in place. If we don't do anything about it, I mean, if I got a code enforcement letter from this town today, I would probably just ignore it, because we all know nothing happens beyond that letter. You get that letter and then there's nothing else. And so I don't know, what it takes from us, but just want to make sure that we're all sort of keeping top of mind the fact that through the budget, we've prioritized this activity and it's just still really not happening.
What, just off the top of your head, what is the most frequent code violation?
So it depends on the time of year. Sometimes, Steve showed me a number of boats that were unhitched. I think Ashley's on record with the end of Green
Okay,
Street.
let's just use that. So what does the town do now if somebody has a boat unhitched on the street?
We will send them a letter, and then what we have done is sometimes we will go around and they will have hooked the boat up to their vehicle. And then you come back a week later and the boat is unhooked. Or they back the truck up just enough so it looks like it hitched and it's not. So, but I think more to Ashley's point is Sharon is now working on several pages of amendments where we went into the penalty phase to say, first offense is $100, I'm paraphrasing. Second offense is $200, and each day subsequently is treated as an individual offense. That what we will do, I'm working on some templated letters so that our response will be consistent across the board. We will send you a warning 10 business days from the date of this letter. And if not, the next letter is a citation, which you will be cited. And if you pay it, great. If you don't pay it, it's going to be attached to your utility bill. If unpaid, we can't shut your service off because that's on your utility bill. But if it is unpaid, working with Sharon to say, what does that become to make sure they get that paid? So the first thing is going to put that rigor in there that we will now give a fine. And then part of that was, in various chapters, it referred to state annotated code 23A, which was repealed 10 years ago. So we're fixing that part of the code. We also had referenced this, you all as town commissioners, fixing, there's a lot of things we're fixing in this, but I think this puts the rigor into it that Ashley's looking for, and then the mechanisms will be the letter along with the citation. You're now going to actually get a bill. So when you tell us, I'm not doing it, well, that's not an option anymore.
But this is under development now.
Yeah,
Sharon.
but Sharon has the draft, her and I talked about it
Great.
a little over a week. I sent it to you all two weeks ago.
Okay.
And it's fairly straightforward.
Fairly,
It's just changing our code so that we can enforce it.
Okay. Any other questions? You good?
Good.
All right, we'll move into correspondence.
We did receive an email. I don't know if you want me to go ahead and read that into the record. We received from Wendy Hubert about the State of Maryland registered 2 archaeological sites on the Carter Farm tract. Do you want me to go ahead and read all
I think
that?
all the council got that and had a chance to read that, so I think we're in a good place.
Really interesting, really interesting.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right, Maryland Municipal League.
We got an email from Carolyn just today about MML's summer conference. Not much else new. I think you probably all saw their notification today that the Senate had passed a law, though it's not enforced yet, it's not enacted completely yet, but eliminating the constant yield notification. I can't imagine why they're doing that, but not much else to report from MML. Thank you.
All right. Council of Governments.
Well, the Council of Governments meets next Wednesday, March 8th at 6:30 at Mamma Mia's, and could talk about the tax set-off.
Mamma Mia's. Park Advisory Board.
Park Advisory Board meets next Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. in Town Hall. It will be the Parks Board and also the, Carolyn, I'm going to call it the wrong thing, but the Tree
Tree City USA.
The tree
Tree board.
Tree
Tree board.
Tree board. the same time. So if you're interested in that coming up.
And what you're saying, I can't remember, I'm like, I can't remember it either. Yes, tree board.
Planning Commission had a work session last night. They continue to develop a community plan for their 10-year vision. I think it's coming along pretty well. I think as we get some experience on this Planning Commission, I think it's really coming together and people kind of know what they're there to do and know how to sort of interface with one another. So it's been nice to watch. I anticipate we'll have something in the not too distant future. They've had 2 public hearings on the community plan and are going through some revisions now. So should be not that long from now. Reports of department heads. Town manager, we'll start with you, and we do have new rules about this, but I don't expect them to be implemented tonight.
I think we can cover it tonight.
All right.
First, to start with the budget, work continues. We're currently in the red, continuing. Everybody's doing due diligence line by line
This is for the next fiscal year.
for the next fiscal year.
The general fund and utility?
Pardon me?
General fund and utility?
Yes,
Both are in the red.
yes.
Okay.
Ever so slightly on the one. But we have, we're going to propose an attack on the debt, which will move funds that we're using for debt service now back into our operating budget, if we're aggressive against it, and that will put us in the black. More to follow, and it's going to be a lot for you guys to go through, but I think you'll see it. Federal earmarks, we applied last year and got money. We've applied again this year. It was interesting to see what I did. Instead of one application this year, I did 2 separate ones, one for roads, one for water sewer, to split them up because I couldn't find this. I couldn't put roads under EPA, and I couldn't put water sewer on the Department of Transportation. So we've got our applications in. The House side closes. Last year, Congressman Harris didn't do anything. This year, you won't find it on his website, but if you start pinging their phones, they'll tell you how to get to it. So that application is due on the 10th. We broke it down by overall need for both of them. One is streets, one is water sewer, and what the whole project would cost the town and why. It was interesting to see the emails flying today from the senator's office trying to answer people's frequently asked questions. So I don't want to sound mercenary, but if they don't get their applications in, I'm not too upset.
Well, how much were, so 2 different requests?
2 different requests totaling $5.6 million.
Have you been in touch directly with members' offices?
Yes, I've talked to Lindsey McGregor in Senator Cardin's office and Deb Haney in Senator Van Hollen's office.
Any sense about how they're treating it this year? It was very competitive last year and probably more.
It was
so.
very competitive last year. They were asking for the rigor in the budget piece, which we did the breakdown for what these things would cost. I was interested that, so we also had to, on Senator Van Hollen's side, had third-party letters of support, which we did 2 last year. We got 2 letters this year. Senator Cardin's office wasn't asking for the letters of support. I did provide them anyway, just so they could see that.
Right.
Right of entry for farm testing. I've got that letter to one of the farmers that's local to our farm so that we can do testing on that farm, waiting for him to get that back to us. As you know, the state has told us that we can lease a property and that can count towards our capacity for our permit, which is different than it has been before. The county still does not allow that, so we're going to have to engage them. I'm meeting with Todd Mon tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Twofold, one to discuss that, but the other is to talk about the Bloomfield farm, which, as you may know, is 3/4 tillable land. And he found that my proposal to use that farm as a spray field to be interesting.
Bloomfield is not tillable.
But it's farm, not where the sports parts are.
It's not, that's permanent meadow habitat.
Right.
Is it? Okay, well,
It can be sprayed theoretically.
right, well, I was looking at it on the
You're not-
Google Maps, and it looks like it's been tilled.
Yeah.
That's why I call it.
And mow it
Okay,
in the wintertime.
but we're going to talk about that as an option. He found it interesting, and it would be a very different approach for us. And a cost saver.
There's already a tree buffer there.
Yeah, we do, so the tree buffer is there, but I think we might have to look at the distance buffer. So
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's enough, but that is part of the calculus, so, yes. I briefly talked to Sharon that if we do lease a property, we would have to look into a lease and the proper degrees of rigor that would go into that. And I've got the data from the Dill Farm in Kent County and how they approached it that I'm looking through to see about how to obtain that.
If it's I think I did this on a map at the office, but if you take a center pivot, the normal center pivot and its length, if you put it right in the middle of the sort of edge of the field, they're right in the center of the boundary, it can make a full turn all the way back
Yes.
in that meadow area. I think it works out perfectly,
It
actually.
would be quite nice for us, yes. Changes to code enforcement, so we talked about that. I won't go back through that. I'm going to be providing to you a draft copy of the personnel manual that Crystal has been working on for your review. And then talking to Sharon, I think that would be approved by resolution. And what the county does is the method for amending is an action item brought for the council. So if in the near future, far future, we find something that needs to be changed in that personnel manual, then becomes an action item brought towards the council. Council can approve the amendment. We go forward, vice bringing more resolutions forward. Talked to Whitman Reckhart about wrapping up our PER. One of the things over the past few weeks, we've been heavily engaged with MDE to kind of separate the planning and design of our plant and the methodologies for discharge, particularly a spray field. And what we had been hung up on was having to acquire the field before we can move forward. We've decoupled that so that we can keep moving forward with getting to planning and design for our plant and then working concurrently on our spray field acquisition. So that was a victory for us, and we'll continue to push. The fire marshal reached out to me the other day. We need Taco Bell will need to put a fire hydrant at the corner of 213 and Laser Drive. It's back behind the easement, so working with Davis to say, they want a fire hydrant here. And that's not our call, that's the fire marshal and how they judge where they're placed, how often they're placed. But as that property expands out, he's gonna have to put more in anyway, so. That just came up this week. We did have one item in the budget for fire hydrant installs. We do ideally 2 a year. We just completed the one. The costs have gone way up on those, so we were able just to do the one this year. The I&I study on our infrastructure. The smoke test will be starting on 4H Park Road on or about the 8th of March, and we'll be hand delivering flyers to the residents there to let them know this is coming should they see it and be concerned. And then lastly, I will be meeting with Delegate Chang, the Vice Chair of Appropriations, on Tuesday morning to talk about our plan.
Good work on all that. Chief? Town Attorney?
I have nothing.
Finance Officer? I have nothing. Human Resources Manager? I have nothing. Town Clerk?
Nothing.
Citizens Forum, we'll have a second Citizens Forum.
Am I allowed to speak?
You certainly are, sure.
Thank you again. This will be real short. The issue with the Little Kidwell Avenue is the combination of the speed, but it's also the stop signs that folks roll through. That's why a speed hump would be effective, because essentially they would have to slow down, which means they would go slower, and then as they roll through the stop sign, they would roll through the stop sign at a lower speed. So
Gotcha.
it's two issues you're dealing with. It's not just the speed, but it's the combination of the two that makes it bad.
Sure.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. All right, we'll move into our council roundtable. Mr. Beecham.
Thank you. Thank citizens for bringing forth the traffic issue. Some of us have been fussing about that for a while. Ashley can attest to that. Without diminishing the conversation about Providence Farm, we should say that other areas of town have had traffic issues. Kidwell Avenue has been an expressway for a while. It's nice and wide. Once we repaved it years ago, it was just crazy. I remember when we first put speed cameras out on Chesterfield at Watson Lane, you know, they were catching people coming into town doing 45 miles an hour, and yeah. And I remember the report, it was the same people every day. Even after they got tickets, they just kept coming down that hill at 40 miles an hour. Second topic, economic development on the community plan. I'm really disappointed that the community plan doesn't embrace economic development for us. Joe, sitting here in the audience, does the math on the breakout between our commercial tax base and residential tax base, and we're way out of whack. And the secret sauce to that is that commercial properties underutilize town services. So not only do you get the multiplier effect of having a higher tax base per square foot, but the utilization rate of public services is even lower. So it's a real benefit, and it potentially has jobs that offer local residents, so they won't have to travel. That's it for me.
Mr. Worth,
Nothing to report.
Mr. President Kaiser.
Yeah, I just have one thing. Your update was very thorough and great, and I'm glad all that's going on. I'm also supportive of seeking earmark again. We've gone through this before on other issues. When the town is seeking funding, should this body not be, through some sort of official means, approving the seeking of that funding? I assumed we were going to be doing that this evening, with applications to our Senate offices due tomorrow. To hear that they've already been submitted, I find that bizarre, because we've had this conversation before, that before we seek grants that the council would weigh in. I mean,
I thought I brought that up a few weeks ago, that we were looking at the roadways and infrastructure under some of our worst roads, and a town hall, but the town hall, we haven't even agreed, or the council hasn't agreed that they want to move forward with that.
right, so you
definitely brought it up here.
he mentioned it up for sure. I'm saying, should we not then have said by consent or something, interested in putting a process in place? I support what you went after.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
not,
following. I'm trying.
oftentimes when I bring something up, it's not the specific thing. It's that this is an actual government that's supposed to be running itself for the benefit of its citizens. I mean, sometimes I think we lose sight of the role of the town council. And on issues big and small, the processes should exist to have some consistency for the residents who pay us significant taxes to enjoy what should be benefits for living in town.
If I can add on to that, I think the pursuit of grants is an implicit establishment of policy, which definitely should be addressed here.
Agreed. And so while I am, again, not concerned about that specific issue, in general, do not believe the town should publicly request funding, especially from another government body, without, like, what if we didn't support it, right? And you got letters of support from other people, but the people up here didn't even support it.
Understood.
Just would like to have that process in place going forward. And then if we need to add it to council rules, Dan can do that in the next edit.
So what I'm hearing is all the grants are coming before us for some kind of review and consent. Is that fair enough?
Seems like a great consent agenda item to me.
Until we need to revise it with a dollar limit, that seems reasonable.
Yeah.
All of them until further notice.
Check.
On the consent agenda, that's a good idea. I'm just going to mention in the future, I'm working with Council Vice President Kaiser, excited to be working with her on a plastic bag ban legislation, and a lot of the towns around Centreville have them, and we're working with some interested folks leading plastic-free Queen Anne's County on such a rule. So look forward to earning your support in the coming weeks. Maybe we'll have a draft by the next meeting.
I have a nice big file on all that.
Perfect. Good.
And so people know plastic bags are not like a Domino's pizza box. Yes. Recyclable. So do not put them in your trash.
And it's worked, I think, well in other towns. Easton, Chestertown, you don't really notice it being a problem. But for anybody who drives our streets, Route 50, anywhere, you are seeing, really, it's an epidemic of plastic trash and litter in an otherwise beautiful part of the world. And I think banning these things countywide, statewide, countrywide is probably a good idea globally. maybe we can start right here in Centreville or catch up with the other towns by doing this. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?